I've heard you refer to growth levers, and I don't know exactly how many of those levers you have, but can you walk us through the 10 ways to grow a company? Well, I'm looking forward to getting into the 10 levers, but that's coming in a minute.
Yeah, that's coming in a minute, yeah.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by One Accord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Nick.
Yeah, glad you could stop by.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
Let's start this conversation with who are you? What do you do? Tell us the story of John Steckler.
Wow, the condensed,
Yes.
condensed story of John Steckler.
I'd say the Reader's Digest version, or in the modern vernacular, the TLDR on John Steckler.
I'm a local boy,
Yeah.
born and raised in Seattle, love it, had many chances to move elsewhere, but something about the Northwest. And I had more of an artistic background until I got through college and started in the business world, and I found I had a real aptitude for business. What was unique about me is I don't have an industry background that you would say, oh, you're this kind of a person or that kind of a person. I have always gone from one industry to a totally different industry.
Yeah.
Over 30 years of experience in probably 15 different types of companies like insurance, healthcare, consumer products, broadcast television, just a number of different, because I found it, one of my talents is, and I hate to that sounds egotistical, but it is a talent. I have the ability to go into a brand new industry and learn it really quickly. And the good news of that is you can bring somebody into your company, like me, that has no preconceived notions about how it should be run. And I take a look at the business from those fresh eyes and say, hey, this is really cool, this works, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't work. And I've always had, in every one of those industries, in every job I've ever held, I've been able to create growth. Not always the same way, but I've always been able to create growth.
And so this is why you call yourself a growth strategist.
Exactly.
And your point of someone we can bring you into any company,
right,
is based on your history and your background, a diverse background of growing, creating growth strategies in a variety of different industries and applications.
I almost think it's a negative to have that industry background, because you come in with preconceived notions about how it should be run, or what you should be doing. The good news is I don't have that.
I want to ask about what you're doing today, but I also want to just respond to something that you said. And as a growth strategist, having a variety of industry experience, I think, makes you even more valuable coming into a role where maybe you've never done this, you've not worked in this industry, but you can draw from half a dozen or more others. You have an experience like that where you've...
Well, I have actually two on that. One time I went back into the same industry, broadcast television, and it was a mess because I knew what I did previously in broadcast television. I went to another TV station because they wooed me away with lots of money, and they wanted me to do it a different way, and I knew my way I wanted to do it, how I was successful before, and it wasn't a good relationship. Now, conversely, when I went into healthcare, this is a great story. The guy who held my job, he was the regional vice president, needed somebody to come in and take over for him because he was being promoted to president. So they hired a guy with pretty good experienced guy in healthcare administration. He came in, and the two of them fought tooth and nail. So the president fired that guy, and he got himself somebody else. He thought, maybe I need to get somebody even more experienced. So he got like a corporate VP, senior vice president type. Well, he lasted like a week, and the two of them were just at odds. And so finally, the new president said, I want somebody to come in and replace me with absolutely no experience in healthcare. So I was incredibly qualified. No experience. I came in, he trained me his way. I didn't have any preconceived way how to do it, so I took his way. But I also had my open eyes, fresh eyes, to take a look around, and together we were incredibly successful. Incredibly successful. That grew into a franchise that went up and down the West Coast. It was over 400 employees within 8 years. It was an amazing growth.
So a variety of industry experience, but one thing in common, each one of them was a growth play.
Exactly. And I use the same process, but not the same experience. Too many times consultants come in and say, with a half-hour discussion, I know what your problem is. I had the same problem, blah, 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 this industry, that, yeah. I know exactly what to do. I can fix your company right away. Well, that's based on their experience. But in reality, I like to base all of my results, all of my decisions, all of the changes and actions are based on data, not my opinion. It's like when a CEO says, hey, I'm going to retain you as my consultant. What are you going to tell me on how to grow my company? And I said, well, I'm never going to be able to tell you how to grow your company. But I will be able to show you the data that I collected that will tell you how to grow your company, but not my personal opinion. It's based on data. There's a reasoning why we're going to go in this direction.
The work that you're doing today, so if you've been in a variety of different roles, talk about the work that you do today. And
with One Accord.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I have a process. I call it the journey to the plan. And it's a journey because it's a trip that we take. And along the way, we gain experience, we gain data, we gain information. I will talk to everybody from the president and his leadership team, to line managers, to vendors, to key customers, to researching the industry and the competition. I'll just collect data, and collect data, but not trying to prove something, just to collect the data. Ultimately, if you stay true to that, all that data comes together and ultimately tells you, this is what we need to do. This is the challenge. This is the problem. This is the opportunity. The data tells you that, but not me. So if you're hiring me for me to tell you what to do, I'm a bad, and if you're hiring anybody to tell you what to do, data is the reason I've always been successful. I've not been counting on my own opinion. I base it on the data.
We've heard background, we've heard about looking at the data. Talk about some of the experiences that you've had that have shaped who you are today and your...
Great question. When I first started out, my first job was in sales. And I was in broadcast sales. I sold broadcast television. And this was a hot industry. It was great. It was on growth, very profitable. And when I joined it, it was right about at the time when it was going over its marketing curve and was starting to go downhill the other way. It was becoming more competitive. It was becoming more difficult. The profits weren't there. The sales were going down. The revenues were going down. Everything was in turmoil. And so they were pushing salespeople to get more, sell more, do more. I don't care what you do, we're in trouble. And it was then I realized, doing more of the same isn't going to get us there. You have to be creative. You got to think outside the box, that old saying, but it was true. And so I started saying, well, gosh, I don't have a lot of experience here, so what else could we do to generate money rather than sell television spot time, which is what we were in the business to do. But really what we're in the business to do is make money. So I started creating television programs, like a travel show sponsored by a cruise line, which had all of the commercial time was still in it, but all the content was paid for by the cruise line. And I did a business show sponsored by a bank, a home repair show sponsored by a home improvement center, and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, at one point, I had 15 television shows running on this station that were really, they were infomercials, but they were informative. They gave them information about how to fix things, or how to replumb your toilet, or whatever it might be. That, all of a sudden I realized, wow, I've just generated probably close to almost $1 million a month in revenue without selling any spot time. And that became kind of the secret to me, is how else can you generate money? How else can you, what other markets are out there? And so then I started, I would put on trade shows. I did a book tour, with an author coming in and selling all of his secrets on how to, it was a 2-hour show that ran on the weekend. I did it for free. I didn't charge him anything for the airtime, but I got 20% of the profits. It was a check for over $250,000 for 2 hours of weekend television. So things like that said, this is what I want to do. I want to go out and, as opposed to the status quo, how else could I be impactful? What else could we do? How else could we sell? And there's, so many different examples of that. And the 10 levers are great examples.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting into the 10 levers, but that's coming in a minute.
Yeah, that's coming in a minute, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about your experiences, what have shaped kind of your outlook, what you're doing today. We've touched on briefly. What drives you in this work?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, you know, I mentioned I had an artistic background. I wanted to be an actor when I was younger. And somebody once said to me when I was struggling early on, before I went back to school, you know, if there's anything else you want to do, John, do that. Because acting's a horrible, horrible career. It's terribly destructive. But the words I remember is, do what you want to do. And I started thinking, well, like a singer, I think they got to sing, and I don't know, a composer has to compose, and I loved growth. I loved being creative and creating growth. And so I decided that wherever I went, I wanted to be in a position to create growth. I didn't want a general management administrative position or anything like that. I wanted companies in trouble. I loved companies in trouble. And that became if you're good at something, do what you're good at. And there's a lot of things I'm not great at. This is what I'm good at.
But you love growth.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm good at it. And so I got to stay true to that. And that's where I'm at today. And that's why I love what I'm doing today, because I can, in a consultative role, I could do more for more companies than I could ever do working for one company.
All right, John, let's go deeper into growth. Why do you think most CEOs think that more sales equals growth?
Well, there's a couple reasons. The most obvious first answer is that's the only one they know. It's sales. But you know the interesting thing in a business, the most evasive thing to do, task to follow, is sales. It's you know, I can cut expenses and grow. I can create more products and grow. But sales is difficult. And so, and most CEOs say, if I'm going to grow, I got to grow with sales. It needs to be. It's the only way. But I always say it's a great way sometimes, but there's a problem with sales versus other ways, and that is that sales takes care of a need today. It generates revenue today. But when you come up with like a strategic growth plan, you're creating growth for the future. You're making changes that are going to make your business scalable. And that's the difference between sales and a very strategic growth plan. That's what I like. But sales is good too. I've used sales on many occasions.
You bet. I think of sales often is attributable to revenue or vice versa.
Right.
Or growth we think of as revenue, top line. But there are other ways to grow that don't move the top line if we open our minds a bit to what growth might mean.
Right. And whenever you sell something, there's almost always costs associated with that.
Right.
So you may have generated $50 in sales, but what did it cost you?
Yeah.
Did it cost you 20, cost you 30, cost you 40? Maybe there's something else that could generate $50 to the bottom line, which is going to mean the equivalent of 3 times as much sales.
So the question, the question that we're dancing around here is, which of the numbers on which of the financial statements are we trying to grow?
We're always trying to grow the bottom line. The bottom line to me is what allows us to buy, invest, do things as a company. When you're just focusing on the top line, you know, I can come up with a lot. I could always come up with top line sales anywhere I go. Sure, there's easy answers. It's called predatory pricing. I'll just undercut the competition so much they won't have a choice but to buy me. Now, I may not be profitable, but my sales will be up. Well, that's not the key to growing a company. That's the key to generating more top line revenue, period. I like the other opportunities that are available, and some of them are so elusive that many CEOs don't even think about them.
Great conversation on growth. Do you have an example of a company that you were advising or working in where growth was misunderstood and you uncovered a different way to grow other than just sell more to the existing market?
Yes, there's a great example. Well, one company, and it's interesting in the industry, self-storage. Okay? Self-storage started out as a tax dodge. It was a limited partnership. The whole idea was you're leasing land, you know, the storage units to people. And so many companies were built as, oh, you've seen them, old metal buildings right by the freeway. and they would go for, you'd depreciate them over 5 years, and the buildings would fall down, but everybody got their tax break, so they were happy. Well, then the government changed the tax laws, and all of a sudden, this industry had to grow up overnight and become a business. And they didn't know how to do it. All they knew how to do was buy land and develop it. That was their idea of growth. I'll buy land, I'll build another storage center, somehow it'll fill up through magic, and then I'll buy land and build another one. Well, now all of a sudden you've got all these storage centers, and when they went public, you gotta fill them up now, fast. How are you gonna do that? You gotta make them, not only that, but you have to make them more profitable than they were a year ago. How are you gonna do that? So this is an industry that had to change overnight and basically get a whole new lesson in growth. And it took stages. If you did too much, you would have freaked them out. So the first stage, the most obvious one, was I shopped all the storage centers, our Sureguards and everyone else. And I'm sure you'll remember that, you've probably seen this, but their idea of how the product was built was they built the storage center, and then the office had a little apartment in the back. And they would hire somebody who really didn't need to be around a lot of people, obviously, and they would live there at the storage center. And they would live in the apartment, and then during the day they'd be in the front desk, and they were the only ones that managed the place, and so they didn't pay them very much because they gave them a free place to live. It was a great model, except when they had to go clean out a storage unit, go to the bank, go to lunch, they hung a sign on the front of the gate that said, we're unavailable, be back soon, please wait. Okay. So you drive up there to rent a storage unit, and there's a sign that says, I'm not here right now, would you please wait? Well, the answer to that is no. I mean, there's storage centers down the street, I go somewhere else. So as I shopped all the other ones and us, I realized that Sureguard was closed 50% of the time. And on the weekend, they were only open from 9 to noon on Saturday and closed on Sunday. If you worked a 9-to-5 job, you had no chance at all of getting a storage unit. So we had to change the way it was sold. And that was met with so much pushback. You can't do that. You have to see the storage center to sell it. You have to see what the unit looks like. It was 4 walls and a door. You didn't have to see it.
How many examples can anyone think of, can I think of, where that paradigm you described?
Yes.
This is how it was, something happened, and now it needs to be different.
Exactly.
And you found a way through that. In a nutshell, without all, sharing all the secrets, but what'd you do?
Basically developed an online tool that allowed us to have people go online and order a storage unit online and use their credit card, and they get a code they could use to get into the storage center.
Now, you not only created a different experience based on the data that you had gathered, and we've talked about data, and in this case, your data was driving around and
that was it.
Looking at what through the customer's eyes. So you created a new access point, but you also played with pricing. So in self-storage, an owner of a self-storage facility who may have got into the business because there were tax advantages, and then things changed, and so now we're playing a new game. A person could conceivably, put another few stories on and open up a few more units. That would be the way to play the game. Just create more inventory. But you didn't do that.
No, there's cost to that.
Yeah.
How can you do it without the cost? Well, I noticed that when a storage center filled up, their pricing philosophy was, we're going to raise the prices on everybody just enough so they don't move out. And so they found 5%. We're going to make 5% more in that storage center. Raise everybody's rent, nobody moved out. And I thought, well, that's a terrible idea. You got nothing to sell still. You still have nothing to sell. You have a perishable commodity. You can't make more without having to build another storage center.
So if you're advising me, I'm going to put myself in the seat of the CEO. That probably would scare me.
It did. It did,
So,
especially when I said, let's keep raising prices until 10% of the people move out.
Yeah.
And now you're 90% occupied.
So I've been approaching this business to say, let's just gently raise price so we don't lose people. You're saying back to me, yeah, but you don't have any new inventory. So let's adjust pricing. So we'll hold on that one. Other ways to grow that are not just selling more to the same market.
Right.
You had an experience, and you have a wide variety of experiences. So now we're looking at the insurance business, where here again, the executive leadership would say to you, as the person responsible for revenue, we need you to sell more. So you'd think, well, the KPI, the thing that I need to do is produce more sales.
Right.
But that's not what you did.
No. Because as I asked them how the process worked, I realized that people call up insurance to get a quote. Then they make a decision whether or not they want to buy. So they really didn't have a sales department. All they had was people that would program in the data and tell them, what their rate was. I said, So what drives us is quotes, right? So what we really want is just more quotes. So I'm going to come up with a growth plan that has nothing to do with sales, but has to do with quotes. I'm going to find a way to generate more quotes. Now that's a little bit more difficult than sales. And when you start thinking about it, so now you're going to work and play on the psyche of the consumer. How are you going to get the consumer? So the research I talked about, the data, took a little bit different turn. Instead of doing demographic studies, we did psychographic studies. And we did a geographic study, which is where you look at your customer base. You can look at them demographically, age, sex, income. You look at them psychographic by their values. And then geographic is you go into their homes, their environments, and you learn more about them. So I came into your house. I would find out how you lived, how you identified yourself, your wife, your kids. Learn more about yourself that way. What are really your hot buttons? And what was really interesting, this insurance company was only sold in the Northwest. So we only had to do this in the Northwest.
What was the name of the company?
Pimco.
Pimco Insurance.
Is a mutual.
Yeah.
Another interesting side note real quick was that a mutual means that they can only keep so much of the profits. And if they get more profitable than that, they have to distribute it back to all the shareholders, all the policyholders. It's a nightmare. So they don't want to be too profitable.
Yeah.
But they want to grow.
So they had a great product.
Right. And they want to pay
Constrained.
claims.
And they want to pay out.
Right.
And so through data, you discovered that the
We
most
learned that
important. Yeah.
People self-identify in the Northwest by little monikers that they put on themselves.
Yeah.
I'm a long-haired software geek. I'm a socks with sandals guy. Only
I
in the
remember
Northwest.
these commercials.
Right. So
The
we
blue
got
tarp.
the idea. The blue tarp campers. The campers that go out and put up blue tarps because they're going to camp in the rain.
I grew up as a blue tarp camper.
That was, and you just said it. People identified with that.
Yeah.
So we had these really funny little commercials, but it was the other thing that was unique about this in the data study. I put together a group of individuals from the company and from their vendors. So I had the marketing guys, the ad agency was in there, pricing was in there, and all this group of people coming up as a group effort to what this data would tell us. And one person in that group said, I'll always remember it. We were talking about these different self-identifiers. These people are kind of goofy, they're really, kind of different. And this one guy said, yeah, kind of like Pimco. And then we put it together.
Yeah.
We're a lot like you, a little different, Pimco Insurance.
So if I heard you tell this story, I would think that you're an ad guy.
You're right. That was a marketing play.
If I heard you tell the story of SureGuard storage, I would think that you are a pricing guy or a sales guy.
Right.
Now, if I ask you about sunglasses.
There's another opportunity. Each one's a different lever.
Yeah.
You've seen the marketing lever with Pimco. You saw the pricing and distribution with SureGuard. Gargoyles was a sunglass company, and when we did the initial data study, the due diligence, one thing came out over and over again. This was a sunglass that was really big and it wrapped around your face. It was a fantastic product. It had one negative. People would say it was too big for my face.
So it was a specific product for a specific demographic.
Right, and it was
Brian Bosworth.
Yeah, Brian Bosworth, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
made him famous with Terminator. Well, it was because he had a big head and the glasses looked great on him. But some people, like women, didn't like the glass because it was too big. So we had a bit of a challenge with the owner because this was his child. Mm-hmm. He designed this glass. It was optically correct. And what we said was, it's too big. We got to make it smaller. And he fought it like crazy. He fought it from his desire to hold on to his child, but also he fought it because what about the cost? We can't create a whole new mold. And we said, well, it's one glass, right? We take a little bit off the top, off the bottom, take it down like 15%, and we use the same bridge and temples and everything, and you've got a whole new product line. And we also got a name for it, because if you take it down 15%, it becomes a Gargoyle 85, which
85% of that, yeah.
85% of the size. But we finally told them the real value here, the real value is that we're going to sell this to our retailers. They're going to put 2 glasses in their case instead of 1. It's the regular classic Gargoyle in one color, and that same color in an 85. So, hey, sales are going to go up no matter what because they're going to buy more products.
Because you're now presenting to a retailer 2 SKUs
Right.
or double the variety of SKUs.
And it's all about shelf space.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's not going to work. You're going to cannibalize the big glass. And we said, well, look at packaged goods in the grocery store. Why do you think why do you think Diet Coke ever created Coke Zero?
Yeah.
Guess what happened when they did that? Diet Coke went up like crazy. People went back to Diet Coke. It's not so bad. We like Diet Coke. So
Yeah.
we came out with these 2 products. Sales went up 36%, but the one that had the greatest growth was the original glass. Because the people would try the smaller one and go, you know what, that other one's not so bad after all.
I like the original one. So we've talked about industries in a few different levers. We've talked about broadcast television, where folks thought, well, the way to make money is to sell ads, and you said, well, what if we approach that differently and we find a new client that's willing to pay for airspace in a different way? Talked about self-storage, and these are iconic brands, really, that you've worked with. SureGuard Storage. What if we create new inventory without having to build another new unit, but by adjusting pricing? How do we find new clients for P&C, property and casualty insurance? It's not by selling the actual insurance, but by attracting folks in to get quotes. And that the data would say the more quotes, adding a SKU, a new product. But what about a really dramatic story of exiting a product line and going a whole new direction?
Oh, I know exactly a good example of that. I was retained by a company called ProTech Helmets. Okay? They were, it's a great story. The guy who created them was creating a hockey helmet. And when he created the hockey helmet, he realized it was such a difficult industry, he couldn't sell it. But he had created this mold. But he found out that if he stuck a bunch of styrofoam up inside of it, he had a bicycle helmet. And so he started a bicycle helmet company. And that grew to all these different types of bicycle helmets. And then a law was passed mandating you had to wear a bike helmet with your bike, or you break the law, you're going to get a ticket. And so, we thought the business was going to go even better. What happens whenever a product is mandated? Instead of being a justifiable expense, it's mandated, it becomes a commodity overnight. It doesn't matter what it is.
Everybody has to have one.
You have to have one. Car seats for babies. They were $400 or $500. Then they mandated you couldn't take a kid home from the hospital unless it went into a car seat. Well, then they went down to like $150, virtually overnight, because they went offshore and people didn't care about quality issues or different things. They just wanted the product. Same thing happened in the bike helmet business. So I get retained by this company. They make bicycle helmets. $5 million company losing $500,000 a year.
And this is, we talked about this, growth is not just revenue.
Right.
So this is a company that if they would have doubled their revenue, they would have doubled their losses.
When I examined the cost of goods versus what they were actually selling the helmets for, they were making 5% on a bicycle helmet. You make anything 5% without any G&A, general administrative costs associated with it, you're doomed. So if I had increased their sales tenfold, I would have increased their loss tenfold.
Right.
Because you still had the cost of the goods. So I was looking at it, I said, well, this is terrible. The market had gone down to like a 12% market for margin. And the components that we couldn't build a helmet and be profitable in it. What are we going to do? Well, they had this little sideline of helmets, little plastic helmets. And they sold them to inline skaters, skateboarders, whitewater rafters. It had a 52 margin, almost doubled. If you sold it to a retailer for 20, they sold it for 40. So, and it cost you 10. So you're making double your money. So, well, that's the future right there. But now I got to change culture in an organization. This is a big change. What am I going to do? So I made the decision that we're not going to make any more bicycle helmets. We're getting out of the bike helmet business. And to really motivate that to happen, I got an inventory list of all the bike helmets we had produced. Like, I don't know, 80, 90,000 helmets. And I said, guess what, to all of our salespeople around the country, double the commission you've been paid on bicycle helmets. But once they're gone, they're gone. Because I'm going to sell the tool to make those bike helmets to somebody else, and I'm going to buy another tool to keep making these little plastic helmets, which is going to become the future of our business. And so if you want to sell the plastic helmets, that's great. They have much lower commission, but that's the future. But bike helmets, you're going to make double your money. Well, the bike helmets, we sold 100% of our inventory, giving me cash flow. Cash flow to also sold the tool, could start making more of the plastic helmets. Long story short, within 12 months, I took that company from a $5 million company down to a $3 million company, but from a $500,000 loss to a $286,000 profit. Now, the other thing they told me when I was brought in was that our objective here with ProTech is that we want to sell it. We want to sell it because we're going to take a sister company public and we can't take them with us. And ProTech, you basically, they would have given it to anybody who would take it, but it had liabilities. It had some open lawsuits, it had some, so you had to make it profitable or nobody's going to take it. Well, here's a company making $286,000. They basically gave it to a guy in California for a low price, but he took all the liability with him. Probably close to $1 million in liability at least. But that was gone. The company was fresh. They could take the other company public. That was the objective. The objective was find a way to make this thing profitable in the shortest amount of time possible and get it sold. And they gave me 5 years. I did it in 1 because of changing what they do. Got him out of his the owner thought I was crazy, but it worked. The guy's still making those helmets in California today. He makes them in shiny silver with, they look like, I hate to say it, Nazi war helmets, but the head-banging 14-year-olds on their skateboards, love them. Love them.
Great stories. Great stuff. John, I love hearing your stories. Every time I learn something new in them. And in this, you've developed a framework. And I've heard you refer to growth levers. And I don't know exactly how many of those levers you have, but can you walk us through, the 10 ways to grow a company?
Sure. So the 10 levers that you can use, you can pull. The first 2, everybody's heard them. Let's increase sales. That's a lever. Let's come up with a great new marketing campaign that's going to increase demand. That's a lever. Okay. Unfortunately, both of those are expensive levers. Those are probably the top 2 most expensive levers. So what other levers are there? Well, in most every company, they have a market that they sell their product or service to. And they say, we need to get more sales from that market, always. But you know what? If you could just expand the market, expand it, look for other people that could buy your product or service, that's one way to do it. Just thinking outside of where you normally would have it. The other one, there was a time, we've all lived through bad times economically when, recessions or whatever. And how do you grow in a recession in the bottom line? Well, operational efficiencies. Always. If you can find ways to reduce your operational costs without impacting customer service. In fact, if you could find a way to do it where you improve customer service and you've reduced your operational costs, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get bottom line growth. And I don't care if it's a recession or whatever, you'll get it. There's two dollar signs that I've always used. One is cost of goods. And it's the one that most companies, I'm always surprised, don't really look at it. And I want to look at your cost of goods, what it costs you to make it, and what you sell it for. And more importantly, how has that changed over, say, the last 3 years? Immediate, 5 years at the most. And a lot of times, what I'll see an increase in cost of goods. It's called inflation. Unfortunately, I'll see flatline pricing. So you're not increasing your pricing in relationship to your cost of goods. So first step is, well, I'll increase pricing. Oh my God, that'll kill sales. Well, let's take a look then at reducing the operational costs first. And there can be many ways to do it. Now, I had one way, which is really interesting, especially customer service. Most companies will tell you, the people answering my phones, 50% are good and 50% are awful. I just don't know which is which. So if you can come up with performance matrix where you can measure performance, 2 things are going to happen. That 50% that's good, now that you're measuring them and you know that they're going to be even better because now people are watching. Now the other 50% that's not doing very good, they're going to go to HR and complain. But the bottom line is you're going to get better customer service at a lower cost and increase sales. So, that's a great way. I talked about expanding the market, but also could be just as simple as expanding the product line. A slight, this is what a lot of packaged good products do. Or even you have services, you expand your services, add a couple, put a couple tweaks on it, take a different route. And all of a sudden, instead of selling 2 products, you're selling 4 products. You're growing sales, especially if you don't have an increased cost of goods for those other 2 products or services. If they're just a slight variation on what you're currently selling. Let's see, what else? I talked about expanding the market. There's also expanding or creating new distribution models, ways to get it to the market. So instead of me selling it to retailers or whatever, maybe I sell it to a different channel over here that could sell the product for me. For example, self-storage. We made it available that moving companies could rent storage units, and real estate agents, the top 2 users of self-storage, could actually rent storage units for us or provide a discount because they brought the customer to us. All of a sudden, now our product's being sold by 2 other product lines. So again, that increases sales. Let's see. We talked about expanding the product line, creating a new product line. This same idea, and finally, the most challenging one is the hardest one. Get out of the business. You got a bad business. You know what? Your product or service has been around for 100 years, and it's not in demand anymore, or it's not. It's been, your competition has gone far surpassed beyond you. Find a different way to use your distribution channels, your manufacturing modules, your brand to create a new product. You've seen that with a lot of companies where that brand is so strong, but the product isn't very profitable. Create a new product under the same brand. The brand will help to sell. So there's all these different levers that besides the always elusive sales and marketing, because you don't know if they're going to work or not.
It's good. I look forward to getting into some of the examples and details of how you've done that.
That'd be great. I'd love to.
Thank you for walking through that. Here's what I heard you say. We can expand the market.
Mm-hmm.
We can create operational efficiencies that improve net profits. We can increase marketing to increase demand, or we could look at the cost of goods. So we've got 4 different pathways to growth, different levers. We can also change the way the product is sold. We can expand the product line. We could create new or expanded distribution channels. So now we're up to 7 different levers that we can pull. We can look at creating a new product line or creating an internal sales force if we're relying on external sales channels. Mm-hmm. We look at different ways to sell. We're at 9. And then the number 10, get out of the business, right. Which doesn't mean get out of business, but it means get right. out of that business and into this right. business, because we've got tangible or intangible assets. So 10 different levers that we can pull.
You got it. The one example of those, the first one you mentioned, expand the market. That is probably one of the most foreign to a lot of my clients when I talk to them. I mean, the market is the market. We have this product and we sell it to these people. How can you? Well, when you think about it, you may have limitations on your market you don't even realize. So, for example, there was one company. They were a healthcare company. They administered healthcare plans, and they primarily administered healthcare plans for unions. And how that works is every couple of years, the unions have to put their healthcare plans up for bid. So they'd send out an RFP, a request for proposal, to all of the companies that administer healthcare plans, and then they'd all compete for it. Who's the best? Who's the cheapest? Who's the best? So how could we expand that market so it's not just when they send it out for proposal? Well, I found out that because they're regulated unions, they register with the federal government, and their contracts, everything they do is public domain. So I was able to pull a report that gave me every union in the country that had a healthcare plan, and who the health plan was being administered by, and the contract dates, and what they were paying for it. I thought, well, okay, so now I know I could sort this by one column, my favorite column. when are their contracts coming due? Okay, so I sorted it by that, and I said, okay, every one of these, the first ones were not going to become due for 6 months. So I'm going to start sending out notices to that union saying, hey, I know your contract's coming up for renewal in 6 months. It's always good to have fiduciary responsibilities. We'd love to work with you. Could we come talk to you? Could we just show you what we've got? No pressure. I know you got a contract. Rather than calling you when your contract's up, I'd like to talk to you when it's not even available. Well, that means I'm the only one out bidding.
Yeah.
And of course, guess what? I was cheaper than what they were currently paying, because I could look at what they were currently paying.
What were the results from this strategy?
$16 million in new sales in the first year.
16 million in new sales in the first year. Nicely done.
That was awesome. That was huge. Also leads into something else that I know you're going to ask me about. Always make sure when you have a plan for growth that you can be scaled to meet that demand.
Yeah.
Ah, man, if I had to make sure that if we got this business that we could handle it. And 16 million, that was a scramble.
It's a lot of new business.
We had to do a lot of hiring. It was a little bit too frightening for me. Don't want to do that again.
I do believe in creating problems to solve.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
an increase in sales often creates a problem in fulfillment
Yep.
to solve. I don't generally like solving problems before they exist, which is the expense of building out the back end before
you don't want to do
the
that.
front end. But it's a word of wisdom and a word of caution, which is, when you hit the ball out of the park,
You
somebody's
better be able to deliver.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
I
So
agree with you. I wouldn't want to build it out either, but the one that's the most difficult is manufacturing,
Yeah.
because that's hard costs. And unless you can look at swing shifts, which we did. I had a furniture company that basically started running 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
3 shifts a day.
Well, you're touching on one of the reasons why One Accord exists, and that is originally we were a growth strategy, a revenue strategy company, and we were called in to help fix the sales problem. And when we fixed the sales problem, we created another problem, which is an operational problem. So we're now a sales and operations company, right? Amongst other, there are other disciplines that we bring into the market today. But it is unwise, in my view, to solve for an operational problem when there isn't a solution to the revenue problem. We have to do the growth strategy first.
I agree.
Yeah. Love this conversation, John. I want to get into one of the metrics that is probably my favorite to look into in a company's financial statements, and that's gross margin.
Yeah.
Gross margin. Not often talked about, doesn't get a lot of attention. It's my favorite. Gross margin is relative to cost of goods sold. What are some opportunities or experiences you've had in deploying a growth strategy that look at specifically cost of goods sold?
Here's kind of a unique story. I was retained by a company. They owned 2 television stations. One was in the NBC affiliate, top station in the market. The other was this funny little UHF station, and the big NBC affiliate, that was called King TV. The little small one was called Kong TV. You can kind of get the, that's just cute,
Yeah.
King and Kong. But the reality was they were 2 separate TV stations, and I was supposed to run Kong. Well, this is a time when cable was really taking off, and picking up syndicated product, old programs, when competition increases, you have more cable stations trying to buy reruns of Bewitched, the price goes up. And it goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up. So this little Kong TV couldn't make any money. They were trying to be all of the reruns of Andy Griffith and Bewitched and everything else, and it didn't work. It didn't work, and they weren't going anywhere. And they didn't cost them anything, hardly, but it wasn't making anything either. But King TV, interesting enough, I looked at their financials too. They were having a really tough time because syndicated products, they bought the top products in the market. They bought Oprah Winfrey and Martha Stewart, before she went to jail. They bought a bunch of the top stuff. Well, those syndicated programs, if it's the top syndicated program, you're going to pay a fortune for it, a fortune, and it keeps going up. Well, King TV was seeing that their cost of syndicated product was going up, and so their margins were coming down. And so I said, I got an idea. I went to King TV and I said, why don't you give me Oprah Winfrey, let's say as an example. You run it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll run it in prime time. And I said, why would I do that? Why would I give you that show? Well, you're going to go back to the syndicator and say they're going to get 2 runs of Oprah Winfrey in the top 25 market. So they should reduce your cost because you're going to give them 2 runs. Well, sure enough, they did. And actually, people liked watching Oprah Winfrey. Again, there was fear. There was fear that we might steal the audience. But I said, the audience at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is totally different than 8 o'clock at night. I'm not going to steal any audience. Well, it worked out so well. Then they gave me Dr. Phil, and they gave me Martha Stewart. And then the really big one was they have a news program that runs at 11 o'clock at night. Well, they have to have everybody back there by 9 o'clock just to make sure they're there for the 11 o'clock. Well, I said, well, as long as they're there, why don't they do a practice run on Kong TV at 10 o'clock for people who don't want to stay up late and watch the news? And they said, well, why would we do that? That would kill our 11 o'clock news. No, you got prime time running. That prime time show carries them right into the news. They're not going to get out of a prime time show to go to Kong. Sure enough, it worked. And that 10 o'clock news became one of the strongest newscasts. So all of a sudden, Kong TV had all these great programs, had its own news program, and of course we put the Today Show in the morning after it stopped running on King TV. It started running on Kong TV. And so Kong went from like $7 million in revenue to over $14 million in revenue almost overnight. And the market was going down over 7%. So the TV market spending was going down, 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 down. The revenue on Kong was going way up, and of course we didn't pay anything for it, so the profits were there. And King TV was getting a lower price for their syndicated programs, so their bottom line, it was all predicated on the original idea of the cost of programming. That's what started this whole process.
So good.
Yeah,
So
and
good.
it was so good. In fact, we had a name for it. We called it the duopoly play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and it got so big that the ABC affiliate went out and bought themselves a secondary station. The CBS affiliate bought themselves a secondary station, and they all started doing the duopoly play.
Yeah, brilliant. Wonderful. John, great conversation. I want to go quickly, just a review of those 10 ways to grow the company. So the first one, expanding the market.
Great example of that was healthcare company administration. We found a way to give them a bigger market, and they generated over $16 million in the first year.
Number 2, operational efficiencies that increase net profit.
There's so many ways you can you can reduce your costs. Great example of that was we were in the recession of 07, same company, and we were able to reduce our operational expenditures on staff and increase their performance. And bottom line, in a year when everyone else was down double digits, we were up 7%.
Number 3, marketing that creates increased demand.
That'd be Pimco. Creating a message that was so commanding that it made them want to get a quote, and it increased quotes by 60% within the first 6 months of the campaign launching.
Number 4, changing to a new cost of goods model.
Oh yeah. I think the best is Kong TV, independent station, going from 7 million to 14 million by rerunning a sister station's programming.
Number 5, changing the way a product is sold.
That would be SureGuard. We created an e-commerce program, new distribution channels, a number of different ways for them to sell. And gosh, their online alone generated over $10 million in the first month. That was a nationwide company.
Number 6, expanding a product line.
That products, you have an existing product. Gargoyles, we kept the existing product, little tweaks, we were able to create ancillary product lines. And gosh, wow, that was, I'm trying to remember, probably 36% year 1, 32 year 2, which gave us a 64% compounded growth in 2 years.
Amazing. All right, number 7, creating new and expanded distribution channels.
That's SureGuard. We started selling them through real estate agents, through moving companies, online, over the phone, everywhere. And by connecting all the storage centers together, they also could sell other SureGuard Storage Center's product. So many people were selling the product, we created our own internal demand.
All right. How about number 8, creating an entirely new product line?
Well, this is always the toughest and scariest. It's not an extension, it's a new product line. And SureGuard, we did that. We created a containerized storage product, which actually brought the storage to a person's home, a big box or boxes, and they could put their product into the boxes, lock the door, and we'd come back, pick them up, and store them for them. That product, interestingly enough, was very successful, and we were able to sell that product to a moving company that took the product national and generated millions for us.
And we see it everywhere now.
It's everywhere,
Awesome.
multiple lines.
Number 9, creating your own sales force.
The number one most profitable customer at a self-storage center is a corporate account, a business that uses that little storage center. Number one industry is medical goods, pharmaceutical sales. They use them as little mini warehouses, okay? Yeah. So we created a sales force nationwide, 8 people that had regions, and all they did was sell to pharmaceutical companies and said, you've got reps all over the country, we've got storage centers all over the country, we'll give you a special rate, and we can actually centralize their billing and send it to you. Well, they were moving out of all the other storage centers into our storage center because we were the only ones that could centralize the billing for them. But without those salespeople going out and reaching them, we'd never been able to create that demand. And that was a whole new market.
And number 10, get out of one business and into another.
And that's usually when that business is hurting you. This example would be ProTech, $5 million in sales, losing $500,000 a year. That's not good. More sales would not be good for them. That product line needed to go. We got rid of that product line. The next year they were $3 million in sales, but they had $286,000 in profit in 1 year by getting rid of a product, as you like to say, had no margin or very, very low margin.
Excellent. A lot of marquee names, a lot of recognizable brands that you've represented, and a variety of industries from healthcare to personal protection, helmets, television, self-storage, and on. In your experience, what is the mindset that a CEO must embrace? What's the mindset that a leader needs to have to be able to pull on one of these 10 levers to actually grow their company?
The mindset I see, and the challenge to that mindset, CEOs, so many of them feel that they have the responsibility to be the smartest person, to lead the company, to provide the answers. And they're as long as they hold on to that, they're not opening themselves up to the other ideas from a consultant or from their own staff. And you know, one line I heard years ago, which I love, it was a CEO that said it, and the line they said was, nobody is as smart as everybody. And that's true. No matter how smart of a CEO you are, if you have a whole bunch of other people around you that know the business, you're going to be smarter as a group than you're going to be as an individual. So the more that CEOs open themselves up, that's one. The other one, the other challenge that they need to make is you don't get into a leadership position like that unless you are a dynamic, type A, take charge individual. And invariably, and I always like to caution them in the beginning, CEOs, as you start this due diligence and collecting this data, they want to find an answer fast. So anytime something comes along that looks like it would be the answer, they go, that's it. That's what we're going to do. We don't need to do any more studying. We're done. We can just do that. And I always say at the beginning, you got to complete the journey in order to get to your destination. You've got to collect all this data before you're really going to have the right answer to grow your company. Because you may be right stopping, but you may have something even better down the road or a different approach. Complete the journey in order to meet your destination.
I will invite you to speak to me as the CEO in the room. What advice do you have for me when I come to you and say, John, which of these 10 levers should I pull? How do I grow my company?
I would say I don't have the answer yet, but I could do some more research. I've done some already as a consultant for you and for the company. Our secret, your secret, is demand. is creating demand. That's the secret. How do we create and control the demand? You've got a perishable product too. You've got X number of professionals to provide the services. So how do you create more than enough product for that particular group, the right kind of product for that particular group? That's the challenge. And once you get through that and you figure that out, and it could be as odd as finding out that all of the unions in the United States that have healthcare plans have to register them with the federal government, and there's all of a sudden a lead list that's miles long. There's something out there. We need to keep analyzing, keep studying. But once we get that, every objective you have is achievable.
Excellent. Any words of wisdom, any parting thoughts that you'd like to leave? This has been a great conversation. I just want to give you, some open mic time if there's anything that...
Gosh, you've given me the opportunity to say it so many times all the way through it, but it is... People ask me, why do I keep doing this? Because I don't dye my hair gray. It's actually it's natural. I don't have to do this. Why am I so focused on doing it? I love growth. I love finding the answer. This is so exciting, and it's out there for each and every one of us if we just go through the process. And so for me, it's a joy every time I can successfully help a company grow.
Well, you've done it many times with some great brands. I'm honored to be in this work with you. Thanks for spending some time with me, with us. If anybody wants to find John, if anybody's interested in connecting with John, you'll find him at oneaccord, oneaccord.co, and his profile and contact information, and our contact information is there. If we want to go on that journey before the plan, that journey of discovery and finding the data where the gems are hidden, that would be great.